Good evening and welcome to another Future Ready Librarian Learning Series for New Hanover County Schools. Tonight we are so thrilled to welcome our special guest, the amazing, wonderful White House Champion of Change. I just can't even say enough about Carolyn Foote, who is both a hero and a friend to me. We're so glad that you're here, Carolyn. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. These are our folks. We're thrilled to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. So I am a librarian in Austin, Texas. I'm at Westlake High School, and I'm both the high school librarian and the library director for our district, which is Eanes ISD. And we're just on the edge of Austin, so we're not in Austin ISD. We are across a lake and a big creek from Austin, and back in the day there weren't any bridges. So our district was built because it took too long to drive around the lake. So now there's bridges and we're basically in Austin. So that's our background. And can everyone hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So our high school is one-to-one iPads for about, this is our 6th year. It started as a project in the library actually with 5 iPads and as a pilot, and call it a pilot when I wanted to try out iPads, so I just put in a purchase order to buy some, and then I was told, no, that's technology. So I asked if I could do a pilot. So we got to do the pilot, we gathered data, and eventually the district was convinced to go iPads at the high school and then now district-wide. So pilots can work in your favor sometimes. So I want to do some screen sharing, Jennifer, so I'm going to try in a second, and you'll let me know if it doesn't work. So today I want to talk about trends and consumer trends in libraries, and also just general trends in the library field. But I also like looking at consumer trends outside the library because I think it's motivating for us to think about what ideas we can bring in from the marketplace and how those trends might affect us eventually, and just think about that. So that's where we're headed today. So let me try screen sharing. Okay, you should see a PDF. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay, here we go. So can you still see my face too, or just this?
We just see the screen. We just see your screen share, not your face.
Okay, okay. So I had the good fortune to get to go to ALA held a summit on the future of libraries at the Library of Congress, which was awesome, and I got to go to attend that. And they brought in all sorts of librarians, and they brought in futurists from all over, and it was a 2-day exercise of listening and talking and so on. But one of the speakers at the summit talked about the library as a developing enterprise, not a fixed one. And so what does that mean to me? The idea that we're always in beta mode and we're not static. So I think when I used to think of my own library, I used to think of it as a thing that didn't ever change. You know, we didn't move the furniture around that much. Bookshelves were in the same place all the time. And our policies were pretty same from one year to the next. And the speaker was really challenging us to think of libraries as something that's ever changing, and that we should be always looking to be in beta mode and experimenting with things and making changes with things. And so that was very thought-provoking for me. And when I came back, we thought about some of our policies and tried to reflect on how those might be different. And I'm going to switch back to here. So one of the things Can you see me or you see the slide?
Still seeing the slide.
Okay. How do I do this? I don't know how to unscreen share, but I can see you, so that's fine. So one of the things we did was think about our checkout policy. And since I can see you, y'all can do a show of hands. So how many of you have a 2-week checkout policy?
2-week checkout policy.
Okay, so it's pretty common, and if you ask most people on the street, how long can a book from any library be checked out? Probably every person could tell you 2 weeks. It's just so standardly accepted across the whole country. So I really started thinking about how our students read books and checked out books, and we're at a high school. We have a lot of AP classes, and of course the students can finish the book in 2 weeks. So we had just tremendous overdues, and we don't charge fines, so you know, it's just an issue for us. So we decided to change our overdue policy to 3 weeks to really more accommodate the length of time it might take them to read a book. And so that's just an example of how you can rethink a policy just because it's always been a certain way. Our kindergarten, our elementary librarians would only let the kindergarten and first graders check out one book for like the first half of the school year. And we live in a very literate community with lots of public library access. So most of our students have been to the public library. They have books in their home. So, you know, we started going, does this really make sense when the kids already know how to handle a book and they already know how to bring it back to the library? And so, you know, just thinking some of those policies is a simple way to think about the library is developing. So sorry, I'm trying to get my slides to go forward here. We'll just stay on this screen. What are y'all seeing right now?
Library is a developing enterprise.
Okay. For some reason, it doesn't want to let me go to the next slide. So now you see me, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let's try again. There we go. Okay, so one of the speakers talked about how we create the future by what we do in the present, and that really challenged my thinking because it seems sort of backwards. But what he talked about was that we're creating the notion of what a future library looks like by the decisions we make today and tomorrow and the next day. That we're painting a picture of what a library could be. When we bring in a makerspace now, that helps people tomorrow or 3 years from now think of that as something that should be in a library. So we actually have control over our future if we create the future we want, which I thought that was very empowering. And there's a lot of groups leading the way and thinking about what the future of libraries is. And these are a few of them. ASL's standards, certainly one of them, and they're being rewritten, so we'll have new standards next year. The thing on the right is the Aspen report for public libraries, but it's actually a pretty great document for schools to think about as well. And then on the left, the Future Ready wheel that you're probably familiar with already. Are you already familiar with that? I'm sure, Jennifer, y'all are seen that before.
Good answer, Nan. Good answer.
And here's the Future Ready framework, which again, I'm sure you've already seen and worked with some more. But just thinking about how today we are making decisions in all these areas, like what our spaces look like and student creativity in our library spaces, and how we're investing in resources now will affect what our library looks like in the future. Another great resource, I don't know if you're aware of, is the Center for the Future of Libraries. And the summit I got to attend, the end result of that was that ALA created this Center for the Future of Libraries. And this is where trends watching page. So each of these buttons is a trend that Miguel, who runs the center, is keeping track of, and he collects articles, curates articles, he curates a newsletter about these trends. But you can click on any one of them and he'll talk about what the impact might be for libraries in the future. So this is really a fantastic and really interesting resource that I want to share. And this is the Aspen Institute report, which is a free download about re-envisioning public libraries. And they talk about there being three sort of frames for how you can look at library services. One frame is really about the people who come there, who the customers are. One is about the actual place itself. And then one frame is really about the platforms we provide for people to jump off from, basically. And so I thought that was a good framework for what I wanted to talk to you about today. So there's a lot of trends I'm sure you're aware of around places and spaces in the library and how those are being transformed. But there's a real different lens that we need to look through in terms of our libraries. Instead of thinking of them as a building or something we're going to decorate, to think about ourselves as makers of experiences. So what experience do you want students to have when they come into the library? And think about when they cross the threshold. David Jakes, who's a colleague of mine who works a lot on space design, talks about the threshold. When students come through your door, that's the threshold. And think about when they come through that threshold, what do you want them to see or experience? And how can you tell them as they enter the door, by the way your space looks, what the experience in your space is going to be like? Y'all haven't had David Jakes speak, have you yet?
No.
Okay. Okay. Are you still with me on the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the trends in space design is learning commons, which I'm sure y'all are familiar with. But bringing resources for students all into one space, flexible furniture, some buildings are even building, counseling center, the library, all the student services kind of into one area if possible, the technology support, so you're all working together. Thinking of library as an incubator of kind, an incubator of ideas, a social hub for students, an innovation hub. So thinking about things like whiteboards, brainstorming rooms, how could you incorporate those kind of elements into the library space and start promoting it as more of an incubator for ideas. I'm in Austin, which is a high-tech center, and of course there's areas in North Carolina, like in Raleigh and the Triangle area, that are really incubators for innovation. So, and really, I like to think of libraries and talk about libraries as we are a national network of incubators for future economic potential. So we're helping hatching ideas for the future. We're preparing kids to be literate and thinking about how another lens to look at your library is that it's an incubator. And that includes making idea spaces. Here are some more examples of idea spaces with whiteboard areas, portable whiteboards, whiteboard tables, different ways that you can promote this feeling. Students walk into the space that this is a space where ideas get made. Libraries are also, as you all know, the real trend around creation culture and maker spaces, and so I won't talk that long about that, but that is a space trend that we're really seeing a lot of. And then the whole idea of flexible and mobile furniture. Think of it, we talk about responsive design with websites that the design responds to the user and fits the user's needs. And think about your space that way. Is it student-centered? Is it responsive to the needs of the kids that are in it at any given moment? And if not, how can you make it more flexible and more mobile? And this has been a real trend over the last 8 or 9 years. Our library was completely renovated 8.5 years ago now, and no one sold mobile furniture at that time other than carts on wheels, bookcases on wheels. And now we see all sorts of mobile furniture for school spaces. I don't know how to play this video within the frame, so I'm not going to do that now because my computer's been a little impish today, but this is a video from Stanford Design School, and I'll send the slides to Jennifer so you can watch it, but it shows how they reconfigure a space a million times during the day in the design school when thinking about how could we make the library more flexible and design friendly like that. Another design trend in the consumer market is fast casual. And Chipotle is a common example of this, although there's some more upscale examples, like around here, there's Zoe's Kitchen. I don't know if you have Zoe's Kitchen, but you order at the counter, and then they bring the food to your table, but it's sort of fast food, but sort of with upscale design. So it's sort of a crossover. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So the idea of thinking about the library, I think this sort of design trend in a space, really you could think about how could the library incorporate any of that into their design, where kids could zoom in, pick something up, and leave if that was something they wanted to do, or teachers could, that it would be more convenient. Another trend I don't think people are talking about at all, but I think it's a trend, is we're talking a lot about one-to-one schools, and you know, schools are not all one-to-one yet by any means, but you know, there's a lot of focus on that. But if you look at how a lot of our students are living, and this does vary by socioeconomic group, I understand, but a lot of our students have more than one device and are often using more than one device at a time. And the students here have their laptops, an iPad, graphing calculators out, their phones. So we do a lot of talking about one-to-one, and really for a lot of our students, even lower socioeconomic groups, they might have their iPad and a Nintendo out, or a little DS. So a lot of times students are dealing with more than one device at a time, and we haven't even wrapped our heads around one device in schools. So there are also trends around platforms and people in the library that I wanted to talk about. And one of them is brick and mortar versus online. So especially in the consumer market, there's some interesting things going on there. So, for example, we have a Nordstrom's here, and you can order online, but then the bags are in the store. So the customers come into the store to get the items, even though they ordered the item online. It's an interesting mix of the online and the physical. And we're kind of used to that in a school because the student might email us the teacher, but then they come in personally to get something from us. But that blend is happening in the consumer market for sure. I saw a story in the New York Times about bookstores that are giving their customers a survey online. People who order from them, they'll send them an online survey, but then they'll respond to them with like a card with a handwritten list of books the consumer might like and mail it to them. So they're trying to create relationships through those hand-done artifacts while also communicating with them online. So I think we're going to see more and more of that, but I think there's ways we can pay attention to that trend and really try to capitalize on it. Also, the whole idea of beacons and mobility. our Nordstrom rack, for example, has little scanners, you know, that can ring you up from anywhere in the store. It's sort of like if y'all have, do y'all have Paulette Destiny?
Yes.
Okay, so they have the mobile checkout app. It's sort of similar. Beacons are a trend that are currently doable. I don't know if many people are using them yet in schools, but they're not that expensive. And when the student or customer walks by, it's like that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise. So it would send a message to their phone, great book in the nonfiction section, or come check out our lunchtime programming. It would send them messages as they walked near the library or near different parts of the library. So this whole idea of them having a personal mobile device is changing how they access things. And I'm sure y'all are seeing this with students who are accessing their work on their phone and just using their devices for everything. And then there's a whole trend around interactive online spaces that's been going on for about a decade, but you know, Facebook would have no content if it wasn't for customers, and nor would YouTube, nor would Twitter. So their spaces are really built by the customers. There's sort of these two-way interactions. If companies do something people don't like, they respond on Twitter by you know, flagging the company. So there's two-way relationships going on. And this is an area where I think we all need lots of work. I know my library does, is creating an online website for students that's also interactive. We changed our library website to a blog, so potentially students can post on it. Not that they are very often, but the idea was to make the possibility available. But maybe we want to have our students help create the content, contribute to the content, find ways to make our websites more of a presence than they are. I know this is a struggle for a lot of our librarians and librarians around Texas. You know, a lot of us aren't that well versed in web design or anything to do with web design. And so figuring out how to create a web page that looks good and is interactive is hard. So this is where I think we can call on our tech friends to really collaborate with us. And this is a need we have that they probably haven't even thought about. I know when I said this in meetings with tech directors, I see them all start writing that down, like, oh, we hadn't thought about that librarians might want help with this. So anyway, it's an area to consider working on. There's still a lot of activity going on around MOOCs online, which were a real hot topic a couple of years ago at like South by Southwest. They're multi-person online learning community that's universities like Harvard and MIT still run a bunch of courses for free. People can go online, listen to the lectures, participate with the professors or the class, do the reading. They don't get course credit for doing it. They might get a certificate, but when they're trying to do a lot of self-learning. And 71% of people that participate in these are international students or learners. But I did think it was interesting that 67% of students that participate in online MOOCs are males. And because I'm bothered by the fact that girls aren't participating in these online learning spaces, and I'm curious about how, as librarians, we could look at that trend, MOOCs and online learning, and do a little investigating about, are girls participating in those kind of opportunities as much as boys, and if they're not, why not? What's preventing them from being part of online spaces, and what could we do about it, or how could we encourage them to be a part of that? Are y'all familiar with the Go Open movement? Have you guys talked about that?
Not much. No.
Okay. Okay. So So this was a movement out of the Obama administration, and it's still being carried forward through, I don't know if it'll be carried forward through the Office of Ed Tech or not, or if it'll be carried forward through other groups, private groups. But the idea with Go Open is to get districts to move away from traditional textbooks into writing or adapting materials online and then sharing them freely with others. And it doesn't have to just be textbooks. It could be handouts you do in the library. It could be units. It could be curriculum that your district's willing to share. Amazon created a clearinghouse for these materials. And there's also the OER Commons. You can log into and upload lessons, and there's free lessons and STEM lessons and all of that up there. So it hasn't quite taken off yet, but they were getting districts to sign up to be Go Open districts. So it's a trend that as librarians we should just be aware of and have on our radar. So if our superintendents do get interested in it, then we know what it is. We've heard of it before, and we can have conversations with our administrators about it. Of course, there's a real trend towards getting news from social media, and this is a graph from 2016. Look how many users get their news from Reddit. That includes, if you're a high school librarian, 70%. A lot of people are getting their news from Reddit, but 66% are getting their news primarily from Facebook too, and 60% from Twitter. So people are getting their news from these different sites, and that's a trend that's both good and bad, in my opinion. It's good because people are probably being exposed more to news than maybe they were before social media, where they might not go seek it out. It's just coming across their Facebook page and their stream, so they're reading more. But on the other hand, if the groups they're in are very siloed, then they're just getting one kind of news or the other, and they're not getting a full spectrum of information. So if they're not going to a website like Washington Post and looking at all the different articles, it's just getting fed to them. It just depends on how diverse and mixed their groups are that they follow along with. So how many of you are familiar with Genius Hours? Okay, so that's a real trend, so I won't spend that much time talking about that, but it's like 20% time and having students explore their own passions. I like to tell people that libraries are the anti-silo because kids can explore everything in the library. They aren't limited to just the core content areas or what subjects they're studying in school. So we are really the place where they can explore whatever they're interested in. And that's something I think we ought to promote more and talk about more, that it is a curiosity space. It is a space for them to come in and explore. And then other trends in schools that we need to think about are like professional learning communities, project-based learning. Our district's big into SEL. Are y'all familiar with SEL? Has it hit where you are yet? It's social emotional learning. And there's whole sections of conferences starting being dedicated to it. It's, a lot of it's common sense in a way, but it's helping students pay attention to their emotional well-being and learn how to de-stress and learn how to be kind to others and all of those things we've taught before, just under other names. So SEL is the new acronym for that. So, but keeping aware of those trends, and on top of them, again, helps us support the mission of the school better, the principal's mission. Are y'all doing professional learning communities in your district?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And any project-based learning?
Yes.
Okay. That's also an area where we can really lead a lot. Like one thing we're doing with our social emotional learning, because it's a district-wide initiative, is I decided to have the teachers, or I asked teachers if they would write tips for de-stressing onto index cards, decorate them, and then we're going to put up books about de-stressing out for our students, and then put the index cards with the teacher tips on them. So just helping model for them how to be more healthy. Another trend that is taking place in the university level is the idea of embedded librarianship. And what that means is they're taking librarians and embedding them in the department where they are. So if you're a psychology librarian, like the university have, 50 librarians, and each one has a specialty. So if you're the psychology librarian, you're placed in the psychology department, and you work with the psychology professors. So how does that trend translate to us? Well, if you're a high school librarian, it means really you should be out in the classroom a whole lot more. So what does that mean for your library? You need more staff, you need assistants, you need a way so that you can be out in the classroom more. So by using the trends, if staffing's an issue for you, you can take a trend like embedded librarianship and go to your principal and say, this is what universities are doing, this is why it's important, this is the language you use around it, and this is why I need an assistant in the library so that I can be an embedded librarian and work side by side with the teachers in the classrooms. So sometimes the things we can borrow from these trends is the language. It sounds better than I need an assistant. It gives us more weight when we're trying to explain something. There's a lot of issues around equity that are trending. And I don't mean by trending becoming trendy, but there's just been more and more focus on the need for diverse books, diverse collections of books in the library. Also just needing more diversity in the pool of authors and speakers that we have. And a lot of gender diversity issues we need to be thinking about. So this slide is the first male CoverGirl model, and CoverGirl just released or just brought him in this fall as a model for them and modeling mascara. And so, this is a challenge in some areas of some districts and for some schools. But it's what our students are seeing when they flip open Teen Vogue. They're seeing a male CoverGirl model. And so sort of the way we've thought about different pieces of literature or, and he's not this, how we think about books about gender and tiptoeing around them, it's very mainstream now. So we need to start thinking about what does that mean for our collections? Are we really keeping up with things in that area? So the next part of this, I want to talk about just different consumer trends. I'm going to try and turn off sharing for a second so you can see me and I can see if you have any questions. So give me a second while I bumble around here. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, does anybody have any questions, comments? Jennifer, you have any comments?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of what you mentioned we've talked about in some capacity. We definitely have a move here to trend towards more flexible spacing in the library, to doing more than book checkout, to being a learning commons, even though we're not using that phrasing. We are definitely moving towards that. Some people in this room are already there. They've been there for a while. Some spaces are there, one step at a time. But I guess I would, leave it up to these folks about questions or comments they have, and then, I don't know, questions for them, Carolyn. You've got several elementary school folks in here too. So I am kind of interested in hearing about how they feel like this translates for them.
Okay, Sure, I'd love to hear what you say, and then the last section I'll talk about some wacky consumer trends that we should pay attention to also. So any comments, stir any thoughts in you about some things to think about?
I think it's interesting you brought up the gender diversity because I'm a parent to high school kids. My kids are very aware, very open to all sorts of different genders, and they're teaching me all the time. But as an elementary school media specialist, I'm not really sure what that should look like in my space. So that's something I'm kind of thinking about and mulling over, because I do see that these children are moving into that type of really open, free society with people expressing themselves. And I'm not sure that their parents are where the children are. So I'm really
Right, and I think that's true. And I think it just really started changing in the last year or two. We had a lot of ninth graders run in when we opened this year, because we're at the high school, and ran in and they're like, "Where are the LGBTQ books?" And we had so many books, and after a while, I was like, "Wait, all these things are not." First I was like, "Well, that's great that child's that open," and then it was like, "No, like, wait a minute, this is like a thing, not, just like they're randomly asking for romance. This is just a genre thing almost." And so that's when I really went, wow, things have shifted for how they perceive this. And, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it would have taken bravery on any student's part to ask for that. So it just really shifted that. And I don't have the answer to elementary, but I think it's definitely a good question to think about that. We're very, how to address that. Is there some literature things or,
Well, and on that, for example, you're in the southwest area, and I know Austin is more progressive than certain other places. But here, like in our county, there's going to be challenges. There was a sort of a very well-known one last year before, with the color purple, and becomes this big thing. I don't know nationally, are there any, with diversity in general or LGBT, are there any challenges or places where that there's been a lot of difficulty incorporating that, even at the high school level, not to mention middle school or elementary?
Sure, I think it's an area where we have to, be aware of our community, and then we have to be aware of our mission and our own district policies. Our selection policy says that we are responsible for providing a diverse collection of materials for a diverse number of individuals and many varied interests. So ours is pretty broad, is to, the expectation in ours is that we're going to provide diversity of all kinds. And that's a pretty good one. I think it came from, a lot of it from ALA from years ago. But so, honestly, most of the, if you look at the top 10 books list over the last 10 years, most of the time they're being challenged for witchcraft, like Harry Potter, or, sex or language, but not so much, gender relationships or anything. So I don't know what that speaks to, but that's just the way it is. But I also think if you pick things like quality, literature that have been reviewed in multiple sources, and they're age appropriate, and as long as they're following the district's policy, then, if there's a challenge, you can say effective review, it's age appropriate, and we followed our process. And then if community has a feeling about it, then then that's something you have to tackle at that point.
Hey, Carolyn, can I add something to that? Jane, to speak to your question too, I would say that I think a lot of librarians self-censor,
right,
because they're afraid. And you rightfully so, because those situations that do make the 5 o'clock news are often very sensational, and very rarely do we hear about the book winning. You know, we also very often hear about when the book is pulled and when it's a sensational thing. So I think that we have fewer challenges about really books that push a lot of boundaries because we don't buy them. So I would say that Carolyn's exactly right. You have to know your community. You have to know your kids. And you also have to know your mission and just try to balance all of those things to the best of your ability. But if you purchased a book that you think you need because otherwise there are children at your school who will not see themselves in any of your books, then you just have to make sure that if a time comes when that is challenged, that you're able to say, this book had these many reviews, here's why I purchased it, here's what our policy is. And the decision still might be above your head, but at least you'll be able to say that this was a decision that was well thought out based on all of these guidelines.
Right.
It makes good sense.
And I also think, you know, depending on your district, you know, like, you know, here we could easily put out a display of all LGBTQ books and it probably wouldn't be a question. I mean, that might not have been true 15 years ago, but, you know, that's not fair to the community, but that doesn't mean it can't be on the shelf. You know, because people aren't going to read everything in your 10,000 books in the library either, so.
One of the things I wanted to say is I love that you said we should always be in beta mode. I genuinely feel like I am always in beta mode.
That's great.
Because it's really changing a lot. And I love that whole idea of embedded librarians because I'm at the elementary level, and because we are used as the teacher's planning. I am mostly on a fixed schedule, back-to-back classes all day long.
Right.
So the flexible spaces and some of that's a little bit harder for me to implement, but we have moved towards it. We're, you know, move more towards centers, and that's more flexible, and some of the makerspace things. But I love that idea of embedded librarians to go and say, you know, because we fought for we need help in the library, and that's falling on deaf ears.
Right.
You could say, you know, that we realize all these teachers go off for a planning day where they all plan together, but the librarian can't do it because the librarian's back taking care of all the kids.
Right.
Same way they meet during their planning period, and once again, I have their kids. So
right.
I understand it. I mean, I've been a teacher and they need that time, and if I don't do it, then they don't have it.
Right.
So you've got to balance that. These are the people you love and you work with every day, and you've got to work together.
Right. And
being a little more flexible and having a little more.
Right. And it's maybe she's thinking of the librarian like an instructional partner, but sometimes using a word like that they haven't really heard of. You know, a lot of things are about reframing them to me in a way that lets them see it differently.
Yeah, we're getting there, and they at least share their lesson plans so that mine go along with theirs, you know. So we're collaborating that way, but not really collaborating.
Right, right. So I think that gives us good terminology. Okay, so I want to go on and share some consumer trends that I think are really interesting. And oops, I'm not slide sharing, am I? I'm slide sharing on my own screen, but that doesn't help you guys. Okay. Can you see the slide?
No,
Yes.
Okay, okay. So I want to talk about just different consumer trends that maybe you can think about at least how they might impact libraries. One consumer trend is the opposite of what we would think of as future ready, but it's about being unplugged.
You've got a weird noise coming off of your screen. Like, I don't even know what to say it sounds like. Like water or something?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I can hear it too.
Okay, then you just keep on.
Sorry. I'm not moving.
No, it's good. We're good. Go ahead.
Is it making it too hard to hear?
No, it's okay.
It's okay. I just thought if it was something that could be stopped, we would stop it. But it's okay.
Sorry. So there's even resorts like the Spider Lake Lodge that unplugged. So thinking about how we can have an area of the library at the secondary level that's unplugged, so kids could get away from devices, would be a good idea. Let me try in here and see if this helps or not. The sound. Okay, I don't know if this helps at all. No.
Yeah.
Okay, so wearables. Are y'all still hearing that echo?
No.
No,
it's
it's
much better.
much better.
What did you say?
It's better for us.
It's better?
Yes.
Okay, it's worse for me, but better for you. Okay, so the idea of having wearables is one possibility, and students are getting more and more into wearables. So thinking about how might that impact us going forward. And we bought some Google Cardboard to experiment with, but it's just something students are going to have with them more and more at the time. So that's going to affect schools. And most people haven't even thought about what is it like if every student has a wearable watch in the classroom and can turn the TV on and off or whatever. These Alexa and Google Home are already on the marketplace. I've already been seeing chats about librarians bringing them into the library. But think about how we're used differently if a student can walk over to this device and say, Alexa, tell me the population of India. And so we need to make sure that our work as students is on the more complex thinking part of research and literacy and not just the simple answer people. And I think we've already gone beyond that, but these devices make the importance of good searching even more important. This is a robot at Home Depot in San Francisco that comes up to the patron and they can tell them what they want, and then it leads them to the part of the store where the merchandise is. And when it's not busy, it does inventory. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I know, I thought, when we need this for a library, you lead kids to the shelves, does inventory when it's not busy. This video I won't show, but it's a connected tennis racket. So as the person's playing tennis, it connects to an app and it tells them how hard they hit the ball and how many swings they did. And so there's already ebooks like this that are able to measure how kids are reading, how fast they're reading, but a lot of those aren't connecting out to internet resources and things like that. So I think we're going to see more and more multimodal kinds of media that we need to be starting to pay attention to that trend. This one's really not about live streaming, it's really about choice. So my son's 28. He doesn't have cable TV. He chooses what he watches by going on Hulu, going on Netflix, using my cable account and logging into the internet. And so our students are having a different experience with media than we have, and that we probably haven't. Like, I just go home and watch TV. I have cable and I pick what I watch and I tape things, but I'm not totally selecting everything I watch. I'm still watching things as they come to me. And he is totally picking out his content and self-selecting his content. So we worked some with our English teachers this year, been working on their independent silent reading. And instead of just giving them reading time on Fridays, figuring out how we could work with students to go, how do I select what I want to read? And how do I find lists of what's good to read? And how do I become where do I find reviews of what's good to read? Sort of to model for kids, how do adults pick things out that they're viewing or watching or reading? So I thought that was sort of an interesting trend. Shared ownership, we talked about this with YouTube and Facebook, where everybody is creating things and it's sort of a shared model. But thinking about how could students contribute to building content in your library? Like Joyce Valenza always talks about, are we curating student content? Are we putting student videos and cataloging them and putting them in the library? Are books that elementary students write and publishing them and then putting them on the shelf somewhere in the library and having their content be there too? And I love this idea. The library was the original sharing economy. Long before Airbnb and Uber and everything else, we've been sharing things a lot longer than anybody else. So, but we aren't using this language, and this is modern language to describe what we do. So thinking about how we can use that language, I think is a good idea. Y'all still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I already talked about fast casual design and service. You know, if you're looking for inspiration for library design that's modern, if you just Google fast casual restaurants and go to Google Images, lots of cool ideas in design to look at. The whole idea of self-serve and delivery. My son's also very into this. Places that deliver. Bite in Austin delivers food. There's a service called Favor that will deliver favors to you, a favor and bring it to your house. Amazon has overnight delivery. So we were talking here at our high school about if students put a book on hold, then wrapping it up in brown paper and delivering it to their room to make it seem cool, like they were getting some sort of self-delivered item to their room, and how we could capitalize on that. This is burritos being delivered by a drone, Chipotle. I think this was in North Carolina somewhere, to a campus. They delivered burritos on drones. So carrying it to an extreme. Customization and personalization, like this is a service called Braze. You tell it what snacks you want, and then once a month it mails you a box of snacks that are tailored to your personal tastes. This is economics, where you design your own things that are customized for you. And I don't know if Kendra Scott earrings have made it to North Carolina yet, have they? She's out of Austin, and she has a design bar where you can go in and design your own earrings. And but all this stuff around customization, I think, is interesting. And how could we customize stuff for our students? We already, you know, help them pick books out and things, but we've talked about how can we, when students come in, hand them a recommendation. I got this idea from Barnes & Noble, and the one in Austin prints at the bottom of the receipt. If you're buying this, you might also like this. So I have my volunteers print out all these book covers from Amazon, and we cut out little tiny book covers, and we file them by type of book. We have volunteers, so they did all this. And then when a student checks out a fantasy, I go in the box and I pull a little slip for a fantasy, a little book jack, and I say, here's another fantasy you might like. So just customizing something that feels like special, that you're sharing something with them. I already talked about that. So here's sort of the short list of ideas for thinking about trends that are going on that maybe we should pay attention to. So other questions, contents? I'm going to turn off the screen share. I'm sorry about the audio.
No, it's great now. Thank you. Thank you. I feel like you gave us a lot to think about. Ladies, do you have anything to say or add or comment?
No, I just, a wealth. I mean, such a wealth of things, and just really good just that either I wouldn't have thought of or that are so relevant and being able to incorporate them. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Great.
Most about this is that you are first developing a relationship with your students and your teachers, so then you know what is going to be most effective in reaching them. So relationship librarianship.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Carolyn, so much. We
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate it. I owe you, so you just figure out what I can do for you.